Do you remember back in early 2020 when there were a few people saying, hey, this virus thing might be kind of serious, but most people didn't care. They were still making plans for the upcoming weekend. That's kind of where we are with AI right now. And if you're pre law, I don't think enough people are connecting the dots yet. You're studying for the LSAT, you're thinking about the law school rankings, and you're running scholarship numbers in your head. But meanwhile, law firms aren't debating AI on Twitter, they're just using it. They're using it to summarize cases faster, to draft contracts faster, to review documents in a fraction of the time it used to take junior associates. And here's the thing that matters: AI doesn't have to replace lawyers to change the legal job market, it just has to make firms slightly more efficient. If a law firm used to hire 10 junior associates and now hires only 7, it doesn't make headlines, but it changes everything for the people who were trying to get those 7 spots. That layer of junior associates, entry level researchers, and people who write the first drafts, that's the layer AI touches first. Not the rainmakers or the top trial lawyers or senior partners, it's that apprenticeship layer. And that's the layer you're trying to enter. And I know some people will say, I've used ChatGPT, it's not really that impressive. Sure, that's true. But the thing is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough to reduce the workload. If the research that used to take 5 hours now takes 1 hour plus editing, firms don't need the same staffing model. And when hiring tightens even a little, competition goes up. That is just how markets work. Now zoom out. When the competition rises, institutions get conservative. The firms favor stronger signals. The law schools want to protect their medians, and the scholarship budgets tighten. You saw this in 2008. You saw it in 2020 with the pandemic. Applications spike when uncertainty increases. The difference now is that this shift isn't just economic, it's technological. And technology compounds. So, what does that mean for you? It means average becomes riskier. It means that where you go to law school matters more, the debt you take on matters more, and your class rank matters more. And before all of that, your LSAT score matters more, because the LSAT is still the biggest controllable lever in law school admissions. It's not your resume or a single internship, not a soft factor that you hope somebody notices, it's your LSAT score. And the LSAT has, of course, changed, right? I mean, logic games have been off the test for a year and a half now. It's now pure reasoning, logical reasoning, and reading comprehension. It's all about your cognitive discipline. And here's what I think most students miss. If AI makes firms more efficient, law school admissions doesn't get easier, it gets more competitive. Not because there are fewer law schools, but because the downstream incentives tighten. If you were casually aiming for a 160 score, you might want to rethink that. What changes at 170? You have access to a whole different tier of law schools, different scholarship opportunities, different OCI access for career support, and you have a different risk profile. And that's just math. And I'm not saying this to scare you, I'm saying this because I've seen this happen again cycle after cycle. Every time there is a structural shift, the people who prepare early feel calm later. The people who drift get squeezed. Now, AI is not eliminating lawyers, but it's raising the bar for entry-level differentiation. The market protects the top slice first. That is just reality. So your move is to position yourself as a stronger applicant. You want to take the LSAT seriously. You want to review deeply, and you want to aim higher than feels comfortable. You want to have a margin of error built into your LSAT score because that margin gives you options. If you're going to invest 3 years of your life and 6 figures into law school, you want to do it from a position of strength, not hope. And if you want my help getting the highest possible score on the LSAT to get into better law schools, to have more leverage for scholarships, I'm here to help. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on Instagram, TikTok as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. Happy to meet with you personally, help you craft your plan of attack for whenever you're taking the LSAT, whether it's April, June, August, September, or beyond. I'm here, happy to support you. And for those who are just joining for the first time, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. If you find this helpful, please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives, and the algorithm doesn't really boost them because they can't run ads during them. So I do appreciate your support spreading the word. Now we're into day 5 of our 5-day LSAT course, the goal being to raise your LSAT score by 5 points in 5 days. Today is day 5, where we want to turn mistakes into points, because you don't get points from doing more questions, you get points from learning from what you've already done. Now, if you've actually done this work this week, running sections, doing timing, pushing endurance, that already puts you ahead of most test takers, because most people don't bomb the LSAT from lack of effort. They fail from shallow effort. They do question after question, test after test, and then they move on without deep review, without pattern recognition, without correcting their mistakes. And that's where the points disappear. The truth is, your LSAT score does not come from the questions you complete. It comes from the mistakes you dissect. High scorers don't magically understand logic better. They just get more value out of each mistake. That is the entire difference. So let's say you take a logical reasoning section and get -9 or get 9 questions wrong. What do most students do? They glance at the answer key. They read over explanations and they nod to themselves, oh, I see it now. And then they move on. But that oh feeling is fake progress, because the question isn't, do I understand this explanation right now? The question is, would I avoid this trap next week under time pressure? That is the real test. And unless you slow down and analyze the mistake structurally, the answer is no. You'd probably make the same mistake again. So I want you to adopt the mindset that mistakes are data. A missed question is not a verdict on your intelligence. It is a signal. It tells you where your reasoning broke down, what kind of trap pulls you in, and how you behave under time pressure. That is gold, but only if you analyze it. So here's what I want you to do after you take a practice test. I want you to pick one section you've done this week, ideally one where you felt stretched. You want to go beyond just checking the answers. The step 1 is to do a timed redo, where you redo every single question you missed under timed conditions. Not the entire section, just the ones you missed. Because this isolates whether the mistake was a timing issue, a focus issue, or a structural misunderstanding. If you still miss it when you're redoing it timed, it's not a speed issue, it's conceptual. Now, I want you to redo those same questions untimed. If you get it right now, the issue was either pacing, fatigue, endurance, or rushing. And if you still get it wrong, you found a logic gap, and that's where the real points live. Step 3 is to ID the exact failure point. Not just that you misread or that you rushed, that's too vague. You want to be surgical here, targeted. For logical reasoning, did you fail to ID the conclusion? Did you misread a quantifier word like most or some? Did you accept a necessary assumption that was actually too strong? Or did you knock out the right answer because it sounded too abstract? Or for reading comp, did you miss the author's viewpoint? Did you fail to track the role of a paragraph? Did you over-index on details instead of structure? You want to name the breakdown precisely, because vague mistakes repeat. Specific mistakes, however, can get fixed. Then step 4, you want to articulate the conclusion. For every single question you miss, you want to say to yourself, I missed X because Y, next time I will Z. For example, I missed this because I assumed correlation meant causation. Next time, I will actively test for alternate causes before choosing. Or for example, I knocked out the right answer because it used unfamiliar wording. Next time, I will match the logical structure, not just surface level phrasing. That is how you retrain your brain. You are literally rewriting your response pattern. Then step 5, you want to extract the patterns. You want to zoom out and look at all your misses together. For example, are they mostly necessary assumption? Are they weaken? In reading comp, are they inference? Are they late section timing guesses? Your next 5 points are not random. They are hiding in this cluster. If 60% of your misses come from 2 different question types, You don't need 10 new drills, you need targeted correction. That is leverage. Now, here's what top scorers actually do differently. The students who break into the 170s do not magically become smarter. They build review loops. Their prep looks like this. They attempt, they analyze, they isolate the flaw, they design a correction, and they retest under pressure. And they repeat. They don't avoid mistakes, they industrialize learning from them. That right there is the difference between a plateau and a breakthrough. Now, most students measure progress by asking, how many questions did I finish? But elite students measure progress by asking, how many weaknesses did I eliminate? It's all about precision. That is what the LSAT rewards. So your challenge for today, day 5, is to pick one section you did this week and run the full framework. A timed redo, an untimed redo, a precise failure diagnosis, meaning a post-test autopsy or analysis. You write a written correction or a key takeaway, and you extract the pattern. Then you want to answer this question. If you were already scoring 10 points higher, what would that version of you double down on? Would you do more questions or deeper analysis? And you want to be honest here, because the only thing standing between your current score and your next level is how seriously you treat your mistakes. You don't need more material, you need sharper review. That is how you close the loop. That's how you turn confusion into clarity. Now, if you want my help engaging in this process, building a structured study plan to help you get from your current LSAT score to your goal LSAT score, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok, Instagram as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. I see Brina booked the coaching. Awesome, Brina. Excited to meet with you soon. I see a question here from Braden. By the way, folks, keep dropping those questions in. I'll get to as many as I can. Braden's asking, even with the increase in AI usage in law firms, do you think that paralegal and legal assistant jobs will shrink? I do, yes. I think that any support level roles will be disrupted and as a result will contract because AI will be able to take over a lot of that kind of work. Not all of it, of course, but little by little. We saw, for example, with the introduction of computers into the workplace in the 1980s, that eliminated a lot of secretary level jobs. So anyone who is assisting the person doing the more billable, higher hourly rate work, that assistant level work, I think, is getting replaced or disrupted by AI. Will not entirely eliminate it, but will certainly reduce the demand for a lot of the work that was done by humans. So yeah, great, excellent question, Braden. Any other questions coming in? Feel free to keep dropping them in the chat. I'll get to as many as I can, folks. And for those just joining, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. If you find these helpful, please spread the word, share it to your socials. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives, and the algorithm doesn't really boost them because they can't run ads during them. So please do share this to your socials in any Facebook groups you're in or subreddits or Discords. I do appreciate your spreading the word. Now, if you've been following this 5-day free course to improve your score by 5 points in 5 days, let's talk about what happens now. Now, if you made it through all 5 days, awesome. That alone puts you ahead of most test takers. But what actually matters isn't that you watched the videos or worked through this with me. It's that you changed how you approach this test. Let's zoom out for a second. In less than a week, you stopped randomly studying everything and narrowed your focus to the question types that actually cost you points. You learned how to review in a way that fixes reasoning, not just checks answers. You did timed sections with intentional pacing instead of just trying to go faster. You trained endurance so your brain doesn't melt halfway through, and you turned mistakes into patterns and patterns into strategy. And adopting that kind of structure is what moves scores. So if you did the work, you probably already picked up a few points. Maybe it hasn't fully shown up on a practice test yet, but internally you can feel things are less chaotic, you're less overwhelmed, and that's what real improvement feels like at first. Now, here's the important part. A lot of students stop right there. They feel momentum, they feel clarity, and they think, okay, I've got it from here. And sometimes they do, but more often they drift. They start mixing old habits back in, they loosen their review, they stop tracking patterns, and they take tests without adjusting their strategy. They fall back into doing more instead of doing better. And 2 weeks later, their score is flat again because they lost the structure. The LSAT rewards consistency. So the real question is, what happens next? There are only 3 paths from here. Path 1, you keep doing exactly what you've been doing without making any real adjustments, and you hope that putting in more time alone is going to raise your score. That, of course, rarely works. Path 2, you keep the structure you built this week and you apply it on your own with discipline. That can work if you're honest with yourself and ruthless about fixing weaknesses. But path 3, you compress the timeline. You stop guessing, you stop wondering whether your approach is optimal. You get expert eyes on your prep and tighten everything, and that is the fastest path. Not because you're incapable of doing it alone, but because blind spots are invisible from the inside. When you're studying on your own, you don't know what you don't know. So let me address something directly here. I know that some of you are thinking, I should just study more on my own first. And if your score is steadily climbing, that's great, by all means, keep going. But if you feel like you're close, but something isn't clicking, you've got to recalibrate. And that calibration is what separates a 158 from a 165, a 165 from a 170, and a 170 from scholarship leverage. 2 to 4 more points at the top of the scale can mean tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship money. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, I'm not ready for coaching, and that's totally fair, but that doesn't require a commitment. A single focused coaching session can tell you whether your current plan is efficient, whether your timeline's realistic, where your current score ceiling is right now, and what specific bottleneck is holding you back. Sometimes students walk away realizing they just need minor tweaks. And sometimes they realize they've been studying inefficiently for months. Either outcome is valuable because guessing is expensive in time, in energy, and sometimes in scholarships. Now, some folks might be wondering, is this just going to be a pitch? And honestly, we do offer coaching. It's premium and it works. But if I wanted to hard sell you, I wouldn't spend day after day teaching you how to self-correct. The goal here is alignment. If what you're doing is working, I'll just tell you to keep going. But if there is a smarter way to reach your target score, I'll show you what that looks like, and you get to decide what you do with that information. Now, here's what I want you to understand most. The difference between a stuck student and a breakthrough student is not intelligence or our study. It's whether they operate with a system. And this week, you built the beginnings of one. The only mistake now would be drifting back to randomness. So ask yourself, is my current approach structured enough to get me to my goal score? Do I know exactly what is holding me back? If I keep studying exactly the way I am now, will my score realistically jump 10 to 15 points? If the answer is unclear, that right there is your signal. Now, you've already gained 5 points in mindset and structure. The question is not whether you're capable of 10 more. The question is whether you're going to approach it strategically or just hope it happens. And if you want clarity on that, let's talk. But if not, take what you've learned this week and apply it relentlessly. Either way, know that you're closer than you think, and now you actually know what to do. Now, if you want to book that free tutoring with me, the link is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. Open offer for everyone watching this now and later. I see some more questions in the chat. I'll get to as many as I can. I see Akiva's asking, how important is practicing for test day conditions? I have extra time and no experimental section accommodations, and I don't know how to properly replicate that. So first answer is, practicing with real test day conditions is incredibly important. I can't overstate that enough because it's not enough to get the questions right. You got to get them right under test day conditions, considering pacing, time management, and endurance. And so if you have extra time, study like it's going to be on game day. If you have time and a half, meaning 53 minutes per section, then every timed section you do should be 53 minutes. If you have accommodations to cut out the extra unscored section, then take practice tests without the unscored extra section. So assuming that you have time and a half accommodations, 50% extra time, you should be doing 3 53-minute sections in one sitting, back to back. If you have breaks, study with the breaks incorporated. Every single practice test should be under the accommodations that you know you'll have on test day. And if you want to talk through that more, what your personal study plan should look like, since it may be a bit different from the standard students' test day experience, then of course reach out to me, book the free tutoring, and we could talk through it more. I see MJ is taking the bar in 3 days. Good luck, MJ. Hope you rock it. I see Julian says, in an earlier live stream, you mentioned February testers talking about multiple linked up conditions. Is that correct? Just wanted to get more insight on that. So yes, ever since LSAC removed the logic game section, they replaced it with a second scored logical reasoning section, and they also have been incorporating more formal logic and conditional statements into the logical reasoning section, since they can no longer test those concepts in logic games, since of course there is no more logic games. And so what that means is that when you study logical reasoning, you might want to devote some additional attention to the formal logic and conditional statements. And of course, this is not a new question type. This has always appeared in logical reasoning in the past, but now it's showing up with increased prevalence. And so one thing we're doing for our students at LSAT Unplugged is we're giving them more practice on the formal logic, the conditional statements, the mini logic game style questions in the logical reasoning section. But you can find plenty of questions to practice from in the old previously administered LSAT practice tests. You just want to give them a bit more emphasis than you otherwise might have. I see Jalen's asking, I just found out I have a lower LSAC GPA than anticipated, which was a 238 GPA. I'm non-traditional and I'm trying to figure out what I should do in the journey and how should I approach it. Well, first off, Jalen, I'm sorry to hear that your GPA is lower than you were expecting. That's unfortunately all too common. When LSAC adjusts your transcript, or they interpret your transcript and convert it into an LSAC GPA, that can sometimes lead to drops. In terms of what should you do about it, I mean, it's a done deal. Your GPA is your GPA. You can't change that. But what you can change is your LSAT score. And so if your GPA is a bit lower than you would have liked it to be, if it's below the medians of the schools that you're targeting, that makes you a so-called splitter applicant. Totally fine, by the way. Law schools weigh your LSAT score more heavily than your undergraduate GPA anyway. And so you want to give the LSAT score more attention regardless. And if you've got to make up for a low GPA with a higher LSAT, then consider that more motivation to put more work into your LSAT score. Additionally, if you are a so-called non-traditional student, meaning it's been a while since you earned your undergraduate GPA and you're several years out of undergrad, law schools will discount your GPA because who you were back then in college is, of course, not who you are today if it's been 5, 10, 15, 20 years or more. In other words, all this to say, there are multiple reasons why you should focus more on your LSAT score than you would have otherwise. And so give that your attention. That's the number one thing you could do to improve your odds right now. Nick is asking, how likely is LSAC to approve my accommodations request? Okay, so LSAC has been sued several times over the years for denying people accommodations who rightly deserved them. The pendulum has since swung the other way, and now more than ever, they are granting accommodations more easily than they ever used to. And so as long as you can provide appropriate documentation from a qualified professional like a primary care physician or a psychiatrist, and you can submit your statement of need before the deadline, then of course, you're probably going to be good. So just document what you're asking for, why you need it, whether it's test anxiety or ADHD, whatever the case may be, you'll probably get what you ask for. I see Miri's asking, elaborate on an LSAC GPA. I transferred from public school into private. Basically, it comes down to LSAC pulling all of the credits that went into earning your bachelor's degree and converting them into a 4.0 scale. And so how they translate A plus and A and A minus and B plus B and so on, pass fail classes, all of that gets converted into numbers out of 4.0 to standardize your transcript, because different undergrads, of course, do grades differently, and they want to make it more of an apples to apples comparison. The sooner that you can get your undergraduate institution to send your transcript over to LSAC, the sooner you'll be able to see what your LSAC GPA looks like, and then you'll be in a better position to see where you're at relative to the schools that you're looking for. As for the finer details of this sort of thing, I would just ask LSAC directly. You can email them at lsacinfo@lsac.org, and they'll get back to you when they can. Rose is asking, are these pre-recorded lives? Rose, I'm talking to you. Does this sound pre-recorded to you right now? I'm a real person here talking. Just joking. Yes, this is real. I'm really here right now, really asking questions. Happy to help. Yeah, no way, really. Yeah, I'm a real person. You wouldn't have known it from those thousands of videos on YouTube, right? Benjamin's asking, is it harder, in your opinion, to get into law schools from an engineering undergrad? No, if anything, I would think that it's easier, because when you study engineering, that's more unique than majoring in poli-sci like I did, or a pre-law major criminal justice, right? You're going to stand out more in a good way. You're bringing something unique to the table. And so they're going to like to see that. And you want to highlight that in your application essays, in your resume. Of course, they'll see it on your transcript. Make it clear why you want to go to law school. By the way, one of the ways that law schools are evaluated in the US News rankings is based on what percentage of their graduates get a JD required position within 9 months of graduating. And so you are more employable with certain backgrounds than others. And if you want to pursue one kind of law versus another, if you want to pursue patent law, if you have a STEM background, if you have a comp sci background, all of those are super employable, and law schools love to see that. MK says, I come from a journalism background. Is that special as well? Everybody's special, right? But I guess the question here is employability. So if you have a journalism background, I mean, what do you think, MK? Is that employable right now? Is that going to boost your employability to have a journalism background? Is journalism a high demand field these days relative to others? Different fields have different degrees of employability. And this is not a value judgment. It's just an economic reality that we live in right now, where certain fields are more employable than others. And so if you can demonstrate to law schools that your background will make you uniquely employable, plus a JD, with the JD included, then that may help, or it may hurt. The question is, what do you want to do with your law degree? Why are you pursuing it right now? And what will you uniquely bring both to the law school classroom and to the job market upon graduating? So engineering, super employable. Comp sci, super employable. If you have a less employable background, then maybe don't highlight it quite as much, or show that you are aware of economic and job market realities and you are doing XYZ thing to counteract that, or you're pivoting or making a change in direction. And yes, Benjamin, patent law, definitely, they love to see that. Comp sci, they love to see that. Corporate America background, that certainly helps as well. Having real world exposure to the practice of law also helps, because it shows that you're going in with your eyes open and you know what to expect from the job market. Nick is asking, will law schools look at my graduate level GPA or undergraduate? I'm in my first year of grad. They only consider your undergraduate GPA because they want apples to apples comparisons. So your grad school GPA, they will see the transcript, but it will not boost your LSAC calculated GPA. So your undergraduate GPA is what it is. At this point, for most of you watching this, There's no sense in being happy or sad about it. It just is what it is. The next thing you can really do to improve your odds of admission is get a higher LSAT score. And by the way, for those just joining, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book the free tutoring lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. Open offer for everyone watching this now or later. Glad it's helping, MK. Just scanning through here for more questions coming in. Okay, Chris is asking, master's sports management and bachelor's degree in pre-law, poli-sci, minor criminal justice. Is that a question? I see a question mark at the end. Okay, so that's your background. Are you asking if it's unique? So poli-sci, pre-law, criminal justice, none of that's unique. Those are all fairly standard cliche degrees. I majored in poli-sci myself, so I'm not unique either in that regard. The sports management thing, that's interesting though, because I mean, sports management, is that like being an agent for an athlete? That's pretty cool. And I mean, to be an agent, you've got to be able to interpret contracts, advocate for your client, the athlete, right? So that's good. I like that a lot. So yeah, talk about that. If that's what you want to pursue with your JD, then go for it. All right, come on, Bobby, don't spam the chat. We already saw that a couple times. All right, so I would, Chris, to your point here, I would say, let's talk about in your application essays what you want to do with your law degree if you want to become an agent. If you have real world exposure to doing that, like you've had an internship in that field in some way, working for an agency, talk about that. You want to make it clear somewhere in your application why you want to go to law school. And that's for everybody, by the way. So, Chris, in your case, I think you have a clear direction for what one of your application essay topics might be. But not just the areas of study in academia, in grad school or undergrad, but also internships, volunteer work, work experience, all of that really helps. So Bobby, who made his point a couple times in the chat, was saying the LSAT's no longer required. AI decimated the top 10 law school demand. Spooky, right? Okay, so top 10 law, the thing though is that, I mean, law school applications are up 50% over the past 2 years. So I don't think we could say AI has decimated demand for law school. If anything, demand for law school is increasing these days. For every 100 applicants 2 years ago, there are now 150 applicants applying to law school. So if anything, assuming that the rise of AI accompanies and is related to the rise in law school demand, AI is actually increasing the demand for law school, because if the job market's kind of stagnant and having a BA alone's not enough, a lot of people want to go to law school to up-level their skills, get a more unique degree, and then they'll be more employable post-law school. So I think the question is, how can you stand out in the legal market when AI is disrupting a lot of entry-level work? To what extent can you show that you have the skills that AI cannot replicate? And while the LSAT is technically not required for law school admission, fewer than 5% of applicants get in without an LSAT score, meaning almost everybody is applying with an LSAT score on record and getting in that way, because that's how you help the school raise their standing in the US News rankings. Felipe is asking, is it okay if you still haven't fully defined what specific job you're striving for with a JD? Yeah, it's okay. I mean, you don't have to know exactly what you want to do with your JD, but you want to show that you have some reason for at least wanting to pursue law school right now. Not like you know exactly, I want to do this kind of law at this specific law firm in this specific city. It could be, I want to do something related to immigration law. I want to do something related to patent law, something related to big law. Then you tie your previous experiences to support the claim you're making about what you want to do. Like if you want to do immigration law and you have friends and family who were affected by ICE or by difficulties navigating the bureaucracy, talk about that. Still make sure it's about you and not about your family or friends, but do be direct about your reasons. Show that you're not just going on a whim. In other words, I see Leonardo says, I just did the writing sample and it seems like it wasn't submitted properly. I called. What do I do? Well, what happened when you called? Did you reach anybody? When did you call and did you hear back? Can you also send an email? Can you call a second time? If you're not hearing back time after time and you don't want your LSAT score to be delayed from coming out next week, assuming that you took the February test, you might just want to do the writing sample again. And I hate to say that because it's not fun to do the writing sample multiple times just because of tech glitches, but it may be what you need to do. And there's not a whole lot of downside to redoing it. It might be the safest course of action to avoid a delay because we're now down to the scores coming back 5 days from now. They're coming out. For those who aren't aware, the February LSAT scores are coming out next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And so if you have not yet submitted a writing sample, know that until your writing sample is submitted and approved, they will not release your LSAT score. And so if your score doesn't come back Wednesday morning when you're expecting it to be, and then you're like, oh, I never did that writing sample thing, and that's why. I'm telling you now, 5 days prior, do it now so that you do get your writing sample back on time, and that's not you. You don't want your score to be delayed, especially if you're applying to law school this month and you're already a little bit towards the later end of the cycle. You don't want unnecessary delays. So the best way to avoid the delay is just to get the writing sample in. And there have been issues with the writing sample tech. I think last week there were some issues with it. So knock it out, get it done. You could do it anytime, like literally anytime. You can go online and just do it. It's not like a specific time like you book for the multiple choice portion of the LSAT. Chris is asking, should we shape our letter to each specific law school? I'm assuming you mean the essays. Like, do you have to write a different personal statement for every single law school? No, you don't have to write a unique one. That would be unfortunate if you did. I mean, you might need to tweak things a little bit for different schools because some schools have different prompts, but you can typically reuse the same essays for different schools with only minor tweaks, if any. Of course, some schools have more creative essay prompts than others. So make sure that you're answering the question directly, but you don't need to write totally new essays from scratch for every single school. But do take it seriously. Go through draft after draft and revision after revision until you're feeling like your essay is pretty solid. Show it to other people. Get feedback on it. But your LSAT score is still the biggest, most important part of the admissions process. And so if you haven't yet secured the LSAT score, I would do that first before anything else. In other words, don't use your essays as a distraction from getting another few points more on the LSAT, because the LSAT is the biggest factor in the admissions process. And we do help our students with the essays, but we typically focus on the LSAT score first and foremost, because that's the biggest factor in admissions, right? So we want to help you lock down the score. Once you've gone through our program, you've taken the LSAT, you've gotten your goal score, then we have a whole separate service to help you out with your essays. We have editors on staff with admissions experience who can go through every single essay, both personal statement and optional essays, addenda, resume, even help with requesting letters of rec. We can go through all of that, but first and foremost, the LSAT. And we personalize every single LSAT program to the individual student. It's not a one size fits all. I see Carl's asking about it. We look at your current LSAT score, your goal LSAT score, then we map out a plan to get you from your current score to your goal score on your time frame whenever you're taking it. It typically involves private one-on-one coaching, on-demand courses, small group coaching, and a custom study plan. And if you want to talk through the particulars, you could book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. It's an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. And for those who are just joining, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and so on. I'll be back Monday, same time, same place. I'll see you all then. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care. Thanks for joining.